the first theory, Existential. And just as I was reading through, essentially what I was getting is that underneath the way of being, the role of the counselor, it's more of a facilitator, helping clients to learn more about themselves and increase their awareness. The counselor always adopts an authentic sort of personality, authenticity in regards to their feelings and thoughts towards the client. They try to be upfront and genuine about them, and they're also really big at looking to understand and share in the client's experience. As for the role of the client in existential theory, the client has to elect to take responsibility for their problems, their choices, and behaviors. They should adopt an active role in therapy. They're expected to try to tackle their issue directly, and they are also expected to work on building authenticity and genuineness, both with a therapist and just in general in life. The therapeutic relationship, it's designed to help the client build this authenticity and help them to have genuine, honest interactions, just both with themselves personally, with the counselor, and with other people. Also, the therapeutic relationship is designed to help the client explore their internal feelings of anxiety, and it should focus on helping the client assume responsibility and control over their lives and specifically their problems. In regards to the way of understanding for existential theory, the view of human nature, just in general, is that every person is curious about their existence, their purpose in the world, and the meaning of life. It's also a basic assumption that people desire human connection and relationships with other people. Individuals, however, we're ultimately alone in our own experiences in our own worlds. People, they form, we form our own values and opinions and make our own choices, and sometimes choosing will make people anxious because they feel like they don't have any power, they're unable to make a decision, but in reality people are responsible for their lives and their own decisions. They do have control and choices at every turn. Another basic assumption of existential theory is that death is an omnipresent factor in our lives, and people either choose to ignore it or are mindful of death and thus their existence, and can live better for that. But we all have to deal with death at some point in time. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes. Existential theory's view of the problem and maladaptive behavior. Most problems arise from not appropriately dealing with death, with feelings of meaningless in life, isolation, or dealing with our own freedom, aka the ability to make our choices. Specifically, the fear of death can cause a lot of people to avoid thinking about death and thus not really be in tune with their existence and in the present moment. A lot of times they'll be focusing on unimportant things and trying to distract themselves. Can also cause us to lie to ourselves and create neurotic anxiety. Freedom specifically can cause anxiety when people decide they don't want to be in control and make their own choices and try to blame other people for their problem or pretend like they don't have any control. Essentially just focusing on other people's wants for you and their values is maladaptive behavior. Healthy behavior, on the other hand, this is when a person is authentic, meaning that they are open to new experiences. They're also honest and upfront. They try to face their problems head on and directly without avoiding them. Spontaneity is also a characteristic of authenticity. Healthy behavior would also include being aware just of yourself and all aspects of yourself, and integrating the different worlds, which I'm going to describe later in the key concepts, but the Mitgelt and the Umwelt and those things. That's also an aspect of being authenticity, is integrating those worlds. And then just if people are able to form intimate relationships with others and trying to do that, that's also a healthy behavior. The ultimate goals of existential theory are to help the client increase their authenticity with themselves and with other people, and to try to get the client to where they're not afraid to make choices, but are willing to make choices, especially those that will help them reach their full potential. Another big goal of existential theory is to raise a client's awareness about themselves, their existence, and their awareness of their freedom and their responsibility over their lives. Just other additional goals might be to help the client find meaning in life and to just live in the present instead of the past or the future. Key concepts from existential theory. The world forms are a big one. Umwelt, which is the physical world we live in, so our drives, our sensations like pain and pleasure and hunger and those kinds of things. The Mitwelt, which is our social world, our relationships with other people and whether we're fake or genuine, lonely or connected to others. The Eigenwelt, that's our individual world, which is how we view and understand ourselves and kind of whether we like ourselves or hate ourselves. And finally, the Uberwelt, which is the spiritual world, so our religious beliefs. Other key concepts are the I am experience, and that is full cognizance and awareness of your existence and usually going with that your death. Existential time is another concept. Existential time is kind of time differs depending on worlds, like there's physical time for our bodies and there's spiritual time, things like that. The present and the future are the most important, past not so much. There are really three types of future. Deteriorating future, where the person thinks that everything's going to keep getting worse for them. A status-driven future where people put off things until later, like specifically positive things like spending money or accomplishing goals. They say, oh, I'll do that another day. And fantastic future, which is kind of the things that people hope for, but don't actually pursue or change. They just expect them to magically appear. Having intentionality, that's a key concept, is when people actively pursue control and change over their lives. Meaningless is another key concept in existential theory. Existentialism believes that there's no innate meaning in the world, but people do desire meaning, so they often make up their own meaning. They create it. Meaningless in life can be referred to as the existential vacuum, and that can cause a lot of problems, so it's important to create meaning. Existential guilt, that's when people, this is typically near the end of their lives, feel remorseful for not accomplishing enough or for not fully utilizing their talents. There's different types of isolation. Existentialism has different types of isolation. There's interpersonal isolation, which is when you don't interact or don't interact significantly with other people. There's intrapersonal isolation, and this is when you don't interact with a part of yourself, such as connecting with certain emotions. And then there's existential isolation, and that's kind of just the gap that always exists, regardless of how close we are to others or ourselves. Excuse me. There are three existential givens: death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. Existential anxiety, that's another key term. Positive, and this is positive anxiety that comes from acknowledging just our freedom and existence. Okay, so on to the existentialist view of therapeutic change. Existentialism believes that therapeutic change occurs. The client must first look into themselves and gain awareness of themselves, their problem, and how they're currently contributing to their problem, and maybe methods that they've tried to cope with the problem. And then they have to try to create better ways to deal with the problem, and usually the problem is anxiety, I think, with existentialism. And all of this is done by having clients increase their authenticity so that they fully acknowledge and can face their problems head on. So the way of intervening for existentialism is interesting. The textbook says that there's no specific existential techniques, which, I mean, I actually personally kind of disagree with. I think I mentioned this in one of my journals or something, but like just having a concept or having a conversation about some of the key concepts like death, finding meaning in life, I think that would constitute a technique. Like, we're going to have a conversation about you looking for current meaning in your life. Like, I think that's a technique. So even though the book doesn't outline specific ones, I think any of the key concepts can be brought into conversation kind of as a technique. And that's all I have for existentialism.